Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
So welcome back to Paris History, Avec, Hemingway, and today we're talking about one of my favorite places in the world, Montmartre and its artists. And as many of you may know, I live in Montmartre. I have a lot of history up here. It's where I met my husband. It's the very first place I came when I came to Paris, and I'm a little obsessed. Most people might not like it up here because of all the steps and climbing, but I still very much enjoy it. And Claudine is going to give us lots of information in our next 3 episodes about this amazing area.
Yeah, Montmartre is great. It's more like the amount of people that are visiting in Montmartre that gets a little crazy.
The weekends are insane, and I just don't leave my house on the weekends.
Yeah, the weekends, if you're going to Paris, like pro planning tip, don't go to Montmartre on the weekend. It is just in the streets, because they're so quaint and adorable and tiny, it just makes it crazier. But these next couple episodes are great because you could actually take them with you, and you could just kind of give yourself your own little walk and basically go visit these places and get, here's all the history. Just put us in your ears and walk, carry it on. And so we'll start, we're actually very close to where you are. We will start today at the Bateau Lavoir. And the Bateau Lavoir is a very, very famous place in Paris and all over the world as far as the artists are concerned. It was a former piano factory and ballroom in the mid-19th century. In 1889, it was divided into more than 20 small studios that had no heat or running water. It was a poet and a friend of Pablo Picasso. His name was Max Jacobs, who coined the name. The Bateau Lavoir means basically it's the washing boat. If you go to like a laundromat, it's a lavoir. So it was because it was so haphazard and put together. I mean, there was no building codes and stuff like that. So basically it was kind of like, hey, look, we could put 20 little tiny places here and just basically just boards, like kind of how they were doing in Paris during COVID, when they decided to put all those makeshift extending the restaurants. And you've never seen so many uses for a pallet in your life, because they basically all use pallets. That basically was what the Bateau Lavoir is, but there was probably more regulations with what they did during COVID. So because it was so haphazard, if the wind was high and it was rainy, it literally like moved like a boat on the Seine. So that's why it's the Bateau Lavoir.
We had no idea.
Yeah. And so for 15 francs a month, Picasso moved in there in 1903. It was after the death of his good friend Carlos Casamegas. And it was here where he painted the majority of his blue and pink period.
Because he was like his sad time.
That was basically the blue period, is because he was so sad. And then the rose period, pink period, rose period is what it's mostly known as, came after that. It's probably one of his most famous periods of, Picasso, we need a whole thing about him, but Picasso had basically like so many, he's known as a cubist, his early pieces look very academic, like he just did just about everything. And so his blue and rose period are probably one of the most known periods of his life, other than Cubism, that people who don't know a lot about Picasso will know those. But one night, Picasso decided he was going to have a party in his teeny tiny studio for a gentleman named Henri Rousseau. In 1908, Picasso found this very unknown painting because he went to go buy some canvases, and some of these stores would actually sell canvases that had already been painted on, because these painters weren't very good, and they'd go in and be like, hey, I'll trade you. Here's some canvases. Can I get some new ones? Because most artists, you treat the canvas, you cover it, they don't just go buy canvas and just go home and start painting. And so that's how Picasso kind of originally found him. And he really liked his art. Rousseau was a tax collector that painted in his spare time. And he basically was self-taught. He just kind of did this on his own. And his paintings, I love his paintings. There's some of his in the Orsay. Very, very different, almost without a technical term, almost cartoonish in a way. Very like bright colors and stuff like that. I'll post some pictures of it on my website, but I always love his stuff. But Gertrude Stein, Max Jacobs, Apollinaire, everybody was in attendance. It is still looked at as the social event of the 20th century.
Wow.
And because of this, it made Rousseau a name, because Picasso basically said he was great. A fire hit the Bateau Lavoir in 1970, all but destroyed it. It was rebuilt in 1978, and still today, artists live there, and it's much better than it was.
It doesn't look like it's flying around anymore.
No, and you could, it's nothing behind that wall is the same as what it was. But sometimes I've known some people that the door has been open and they've been popped inside there to go see, which would be pretty amazing.
That would be cool. I've never seen the door open.
No, I mean, it kind of looks like nothing's even there, because you see like no movement of people coming in and out. And I think there's like other doors to get there, because it's a pretty huge space inside. I think there's other doors on the side streets to get in there. So that's probably why. They probably don't want to use that door, because of the reason why people are standing there.
Yeah, because that's where I play ball with Coco.
Yeah.
And like always tour groups walking by. Yeah. And I never see anybody come in that door.
Yeah, and the whole window in front of it is all about, basically, because it's kind of connected to the Musée de Montmartre, which we'll talk about next week. But the Musée de Montmartre has a big thing in the windows. When you go with Coco next time, go check it out, because it usually has something about like, oh, this is what this was. But it is there, right there where the Coco's dog park is the Place Émilie Goudot. It was named after a poet and a journalist, Émilie Goudot. He founded the Hippocrates Society, which was ahead of its time in the marketing idea to promote all of the members of that belonged to them that were writers and poets.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So it was his friend Rodolphe Célie who opened the Chat Noir in 1881, where they all would gather. That park right there, going back even farther to Napoleon's time, that is where he would tie up his horse to the tree, probably a different tree now, but still kind of cool. He would tie up his horse to the tree there in 1809, and then walk up Saint-Pierre. So right there.
I'm trying to imagine that.
Yeah. Well, he probably had somebody tying it up for him. So if you just kind of leave there and go head up towards the hill and go to your right is a street called Rue de l'Argent. Is his little short elbow street that was once where the studio of Renoir was, where he painted our very first woman ever we talked about, Suzanne Valadon. It was here that he painted the paintings of the three dance paintings, the Dance in the City, Country, and Bougival. And at the end of that street, at the very corner, is where we talked about another one of our first ladies we talked about, and one of our favorites, Dalida. She lived there from 1962 to her death in 1987. And we love that. And recently, one of those apartments in there was for sale. And you and I were trying to find all the pictures we could to see the inside, and we found nothing.
Limited on pictures. I'm sure someone bought it though, because they were popping bottles of champagne up there.
Yeah, I'm sure. And Dalida, I'll link to that episode. It was one of the very first ones we did after Suzanne Valadon. I think it was the second one, maybe. Dalida, if you don't know, we always call her the French Cher, even though she wasn't French. She was Egyptian and Italian. She was born in 1933, moved to Paris in 1954. Inspired by the great Rita Hayworth in one of the best movies, Gilda. She was an international star, but she had a very sad personal love life, with one of her lovers after another killing themselves or dying in an accident. On May 3rd, 1987, when she couldn't take it anymore, which is exactly what she said, she overdosed on pills that she washed down with whiskey, which is heartbreaking. And you have to listen to her whole episode. She was an amazing, she's so cool. The way everything about her is so cool. Except for the bad ending. But during the 1950s, the studio, MGM, the American studio, actually put their offices in there, and they set up a lot of the artists, the actors would live there, including Paul Newman, who stayed there for a little while.
Oh, wait, Paul Newman lived in her house?
Yeah, because it was MGM, the studio bought it. So now it's a bunch of apartments. So they split the whole thing up. But
Yeah, it's big apartments now.
yeah. Then you go, there's just that little tiny street there. You walk down that street, and at the end of that you'll look right at another famous Parisian landmark, the Moulin de la Galette, one of the few remaining windmills in the city. It dates back to the 17th century when the windmills basically dotted the hills all over Montmartre. In 1809, the Debray family began making a brown bread known as a galette, giving the landmark its name. During the Napoleonic era of 1814, 3 of the men in the family were killed. The surviving son in 1814 changed the mill into a guignette, which is, and in 1830 it became a dance hall. And there's a very famous painting done that is the the Moulin de la Galette that Renoir did. Van Gogh also did a painting of the Moulin de la Galette.
Every time I walk by, there's like a million people in the road trying to take pictures, and they're always getting almost hit.
Have you ever eaten there?
I did eat there once, and it was fine. I mean, I didn't think it was amazing, but it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of wanted to go there, but it does run the risk of it being touristy, but touristy in the terms of it being, they could charge a lot of money and the food's not going to be great.
Yeah, I went there with a client years ago, but it may have changed. And I mean, like I said, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't like amazing.
It wasn't amazing.
It was just normal.
Oh, I'll have to go check it out. But that street right there is Rue Le Pic. Rue Le Pic kind of, we'll talk about it again in 2 weeks. It kind of is a long street that winds its way up Montmartre. It was created first by Napoleon, and it was one of the only streets that actually got that actually they could use to travel to the top. And it goes all the way up to Rue Avignon. It was originally called the Rue de l'Empire. Rue of the Emperor, of course. But on this street, also down below, which we'll talk about again in a couple weeks, was also where Degas and Van Gogh lived.
All the best people lived in Montmartre.
And it's funny because the artists, like, you have different pockets. So it's like they were in Montmartre, and then when that got too expensive, they went to Montparnasse. So they always kind of traveled. Now, when you look at all of us expats that are, creative, doing what we do, everybody's scattered. It's not like everybody's living in the same area like it was back then.
We all stick together.
Yeah. But right by there, another park I think that Coco frequents is the Place Jean-Baptiste Clement. Dates back to 1905, and it's named after the French singer and lyricist who was a journalist who wrote against Napoleon III, which is already going to tell you that's not going to end well. He even created a paper arguing against Napoleon III then of course he was sent off to prison. Once he was released, he stood up and was elected to the Council of the Commune and fought during the Bloody Week. He fled France to go to London, where he was then sentenced to death. But he was luckily given a pardon in 1880 and returned to Paris, where he found a socialist organization. But in 1903, he died, and he is now buried in Père Lachaise. But this park was named after him in 1905 to thank him for everything that he did.
He survived all that, and then that was that.
That was that. Yeah, but right next to that is a really cool building, and it used to have this really awesome kind of street art on the outside painted that had an image of Dalida and of Edith Piaf. Sadly, that was all covered up. It was a commission thing. It wasn't like somebody did it rogue, but is the Comédière de Clos Montmartre. And this is a former water tower reservoir that was built in 1835. It replaced the former hunting lodge of Catherine de Medici. The neoclassical structure is by the architect Tito de Fresnay. It was what used to pull the water up to Montmartre that fed from the pumps that came from the Seine in Saint-Ouen. It was demolished in 1927, and then the octagonal-shaped one that's there now has a huge, amazing bronze door. And inside is actually the organization that oversees the vineyard that's up there at Montmartre.
Wait, they have like a little hangout space in
That's
there
like,
now?
yeah, that's their little office. And sometime when you go by there, the door's open.
Yeah, because that's another one of Coco's park areas.
Yeah.
And I always said to Pepe, I said, I think that's an apartment. And he's like, no, they wouldn't live in a water tower. And I was
Yeah.
like, but there's lights in there.
No, it's like their little office for the people that run the vineyard.
Oh, that's cool.
I think we could just call this episode like Coco's about Montmartre.
Yeah, I'm going to say Coco's Montmartre.
Right. And then when you're standing there, look straight ahead. There is this really cool building. It's one that you always said was haunted. The Folie Sandrin, and it's at number 22 Rue Norvin. Antoine Sandrin bought this property and built this home in 1774 and called it the Palais Bellevue. Sandrin made a fortune by making candlesticks and candles. The house at the time was in the village of Montmartre, of course, where that wasn't, the buildings weren't like they were then. You had tons of space around you. It was that just up there. It was called the Folie Sandrin. Folie means madness. In 1795, it was sold to a wine merchant, and in 1806, a doctor named Dr. Prost purchased this house and ended up setting it up as a place to treat the mental illnesses of the people of Paris. And the 24 rooms were then turned into an asylum.
Very.
So it could be haunted. It treated many of the artists and the writers of Montmartre, and it gained success in 1820 when Dr. Esprit Blanche, who was also had known Proust, was believed that kindness would help cure these people rather than the horrible treatments that they were actually performing at the time. Poet Gerard de Nerval stayed there. He was treated there. He was one of the greatest poets of the 19th century. It was very expensive to stay there, but Blanche offered to have free treatment to the artists. Jacques Arago also was treated there. He was the brother of Francois Arago, who is the name of those brass markers you see throughout Paris that are, a lot of people know from the Da Vinci Code. But it was in the 1950s, it was sold off again. It was the niece of Josephine, Emily de la Valette. In 1875, it became a home for maidens. All those unwed women needed their own home. Now it's just Paris. But it became in 1950. It was sold off, and then it was purchased by developers. And is it still under construction? Is there still construction going on? Because it has been for years.
They're almost done. It looks like, but they've been doing a lot of work.
Yeah, they're turning it into very fancy apartments now.
Oh, because I had looked at an apartment in there before we moved here, and it's really cool because you have your own private garden in the back. The whole back is a big garden. Lived
there because it was you thought it was haunted,
and also it was like kind of dark. There wasn't much light.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, you got to have light. If you take a right from there and keep on going straight up, you will see another very famous little corner that is one of those ones that's been documented in images for probably 80 years. The restaurant La Consola is there. It dates back to the 19th century. It was frequented by many of the artists in the village. To the left of that is La Bonne Franquette. The building dates back to the 16th century. It was rebuilt after the 1559 fire that ravished Montmartre. On the Rue Saint Rustique, Rustique was one of the other gentlemen that was with Saint Denis when he lost his head. We'll talk about that next week. Haussmann, when he was going through his period of cutting through all of Paris, demolishing things, Montmartre was pretty much left untouched. So that's like when people ask me when I'm giving tours, they're like, what's the oldest part of Paris? I tell people a lot of times go up to Montmartre because that is, there's pockets of the Marais, there's pockets of Saint-Germain, there's pockets of Paris that are older, but Montmartre for the most part was left untouched by Haussmann. So that's why you do have those smaller streets where it's clogged with people.
My favorite.
Yeah. The Bonne Franquette was originally called Au Billard en Bois. This is where Gauguin, Van Gogh, Pissarro, Degas, Renoir, Toulouse-Lautrec, Suzanne Valadon, all of them, they all hung out there. And it is actually noted they have like different things painted on the building with about that. Van Gogh actually painted it as well. And you can see that painting at the Orsay. In 1925, it changed to La Bonne Franquette. And they used to have an inn upstairs until the 1950s. These artists could go and stay there in these tiny rooms up above. Now I was up there recently one day, and I just was like, it was, 3:00 in the afternoon, and I was actually like, hadn't eaten. I was starving and I was thirsty, and I went there, and I ended up getting just a Coke, and then was going to get like some fromage, and they were like, oh, it's going to take 2 hours for that. I'm like, fromage, you just cut it up and put it on the plate.
2 hours?
And it was just like, and I think like the Coke ended up being like 10 euros or something. And I just was like, I just paid for it and left. So that's where you run into those problems of those places in those areas. Just be aware of that. Like it's going to be busy. You're going to get charged a lot. It's probably not going to be great. But if we go up a little farther, you love this area. We go right into one of the most popular places and well-known of Montmartre, the Place de Théâtre. It was founded in the 14th century. This was the center of the village of Montmartre, and it was part of the Abbey of Montmartre. Today it holds artists that are there that each fight with the city and the restaurants for the space, because sometimes the restaurants go over and set up. Last time I was there, I didn't notice they had moved over into there yet, the restaurants.
Yeah, they set up the tables in the summer now in the square, but they still don't go over the artist spot.
Yeah, they used to put like big tents and stuff, like really take up a lot of it.
They still do that, but they take it away in the winter.
Oh, that's good. The current space has been open to the public since 1635. In fact, if you look in the corner, it was the original mayor's office of Montmartre. Montmartre was not part of Paris either. It was its own incorporated. That's why the artists went up there, because it was so much cheaper to live there, because there was none of the Paris taxes on the wine and everything. And, where the wine is cheap, you go. I mean, I don't blame them. But today, 300 artists have small 3-foot spots there. They share each of the spots with 2 artists. So 3 artists share. It's 550 euros for the year to have that. They alternate the days of the week. It's a 10-year wait to get a spot, and one of them always has to be there. So some artists that because they're getting drunk below your window every day. They Jacques works Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Pierre works Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So one of them has to always be there in the spot. But they share it, and it's only 550 euros a year.
That's it? That's crazy. It's like the most visited place in Paris besides the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, and everybody, if anybody has spent even a few moments up there, you will get stopped by one of them that's walking the streets offering to paint your portrait. It's up to you if you want to do it, but it's they've got to be making some good money up there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because you see them all the time painting people. I have some really cool paintings that my grandparents bought there in the 70s and the 80s. My grandpa was so great because he wrote on the back of everything, and he wrote the address of where he bought it. And all of those, they were returning to Paris with me. But in this place, on Christmas Eve of 1898, a gentleman named Louis Renault wagered that he could get his brand new car that he created up the hill. He was just 21, and his Renault Type A voiture, his little car, slowly climbed all the way Rue Lepic and got to the corner of Place de Théâtre with everybody screaming and cheering, amazed that this motorized thing can make it up the hill. He felt because of this, it basically ended up, he was selling cars left and right. Everybody had to have one. And there's a plaque there in the corner that remembers this moment.
That's a great publicity stunt.
It is. And then another one of the most famous things that happened there is give the name to a very important thing in Paris. In 1814, the Russian Cossack officers went up to Montmartre during the Battle of Paris. They were living it up on all the wine. They were at the restaurant called La Mère Catherine. They yelled in Russian to the server, saying "Bistro, bistro," which I'm giving it more of a French accent, but in Russian it basically means quick, quick. And that now the rest is history, because a bistro, if you want something quick, you go to a bistro.
Wait, so Russians name the French bistro?
Yeah, that's the story. And there's a plaque above the restaurant too. It's very hard to see, especially when they have the awning down or anything like that. But that was where it was, in the Place du Theatre.
No idea. Very interesting.
All this right in your backyard.
Exactly. Now when I walk Coco, I'll know even more.
Now you'll know more. If you walk out of there, you look up towards Sacre-Cœur. Below Sacre-Cœur is another church, but this is what you call the Place de Calvi. It was named for the order that once stood there. This whole area right where we are and going down the hill, at one point was all of the Abbey of Montmartre, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next 2 weeks. But there was a huge fire that happened up there, destroying almost all of it. The house on the corner at the very edge of the Place du Theatre before you go was where Maurice Neumont, who was a painter and a lithographer, he lived there. This was also the very first place where they had the mayor's office as well. But if you go towards the church, the smaller church you see in front of you, to the left is a cemetery, and it is the Saint-Calvière Cemetery. It is the oldest graves in there, date back to 1688. It's the second oldest cemetery in Paris. It was destroyed during the Revolution and was relaid and opened again in 1801. It is the smallest remaining cemetery of Paris. It only has 85 tombs, and today it is only open 1 day a year on All Saints' Day, November 1st, and I cannot wait to go there this year.
Yeah, I'm going this year. It was closed before for the pandemic.
Yeah, but I'm going to be there this year. I can't wait. They did not take any new inhabitants since 1831. But the Debray family of the Moulin de la Galette that we mentioned, who some of them died rather horribly because they were killed and tied to the windmill.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Their tomb is topped with a small red windmill. And so I can't wait to go see it. And we'll share pictures in November when we do.
Wow.
Yeah. But the doors, so the church that's right there, it is the Saint-Pierre de Montmartre. The doors, as soon as you look at it, the doors on it, there's these beautiful bronze doors that are on there. They were done in 1980 by an Italian sculptor named Tommaso Gismondi. He also did the doors of the Vatican in Vatican City.
Yeah.
He did. They're beautiful. They're all about the resurrection and the original but the original church dates back even farther. It goes back to the 11th century when this was a pilgrimage spot for those devoted to Saint Denis. They'd come up the hill. A lot of people think Saint Denis was beheaded on the top of Montmartre, but it was actually below, which will again tell you next week. But Saint Denis, this was part of his route. When he picked up his head and walked over and walked out to what we call Saint Denis now, this was on his way. And so he would have his devoted followers, they still do to this day, mark this as one of the signs on the route. There's two temples that were there at the time. One was dedicated to Mars and Mercury. It was restored in 1470, and the vault, it's with this vaulted style. It has plenty of windows. It's very small in there. It's really, really cool. If you go in that church, definitely go in there. If you're up in Montmartre, don't just go to Sacre-Cœur, go here too. In 1559 is when the fire broke out at the Abbey, in the nuns' dormitory, which, basically destroyed everything. Part of the church was destroyed at that time, but it was rebuilt. The facade of itself was restored in the 17th century, and I think they're going to start doing some work on it again. In 1794, this is where the Saint Denis, the name was stripped from it because it was originally the Saint Denis Church, and then it was changed to Saint Pierre. And in 1806, the church was returned to those that were the very devoted followers, but still named Saint Pierre.
It's a beautiful church.
It's a really, really cool church. Inside the doors, there's 4 white marble columns and capitals that are some of the oldest things that you will see in Paris. They are not marked. There's no sign. So you go in there, you would never even know this, but because of you listening to this, you go in there, and when you walk in the door, go to the left and go to the right. These columns and capitals date back to the 7th century.
Wow, that's insane.
Very old. The door on the left is the story of Saint Denis. The one in the center is Saint Pierre. And then the one on the right is of Notre Dame, Our Lady, not the church. In 1980, the 3 doors that were added prior to this, and then one more door was added to the left of the facade. You see also the amazing doors at the cemetery, and also to the right, which is part of the offices. But it's it's a really, really neat church in there. The stained glass in there is really fantastic as well. But so definitely walk in there and go check it out. It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely worth a visit.
Yeah. But if you walk out there, we just have 2 more little stops on the way. If you walk out there and start to head back down the hill going towards the Eiffel Tower, you will go into a little tiny park, another park of Cocos. Yeah, which is on the Rue Saint-Aloutre. It is the Square Nadar. There's a statue in there. It says it is of Labarre. Francois-Jean Labarre. He was accused of vandalism in 1765 on the bridge of Abbeville. It was shocking of the time because it was when the church was doing this huge march of Corpus Christi, and he and his friends decided to basically not stand and not remove their hat as the procession went by. And people were so outraged, they demanded that he be arrested. He was also accused of loudly singing. I mean, this is like Footloose kind of stuff.
Oh gosh, you would never survive in today's world.
Yeah, no, you never would survive. Yeah, now you'd be murdered on social media. On July 1st, 1766, he was tortured and beheaded and burned, and his ashes were tossed into the Somme. He was tried for witchcraft, and even Voltaire tried to defend him, but in his writings to no avail. He was just 19 years old when he was killed. In 1794, he was pardoned and became the image of free speech.
Wait, after they murdered and tortured him?
Yeah. So in retrospect, they were like, hey, maybe it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, sorry.
Now he's a poster boy for free speech, which I don't think probably many people know who he is. But in 1906, a statue of him was erected. It was completed. It was actually placed in front of Sacré-Cœur. In 1926, it was moved to its current location in this little park. The original statue by Armand Bloch was melted down in October 1941 by the Vichy government in World War II. But in 2001, the Paris City Council decided they have another statue created, this one by Emmanuel Ball, in its site, and it's placed on the original base that it once lived on.
Oh, so it's not even the original statue.
No, it's not the original. But that you have that a lot of times in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Old.
So that, and then right after that, you go to Sacré-Cœur, which we'll tell you all about another time.
Well, then you guys better tune in next week because we're going to be talking about Montmartre for the next couple of weeks, which I am super excited about. And don't forget to check out Claudine's website, ClaudineHemingway.com, and join her for her live tours every Sunday.
And in person. And if you are coming to Paris soon, hit me up because it is very, very busy and I don't have many openings. So I would love to give you a tour in Paris. So reach out.
Reach out to her on her website, guys.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.